Financial Secretary, please continue. Thank you, President, members and members of the public. My apologies. I will now continue. Offshore RMB business hub. Hong Kong's offshore RMB market is the largest in scale. With our geographical and cultural edges, as well as first mover advantage, Hong Kong has been performing the role of facilitator and innovator in proactively promoting the internationalization of RMB in terms of offshore RMB capital flow, clearing volume, products type, and risk management tool. In the future, we will explore ways to further expand the channels for the two-way flow of cross-boundary RMB funds, as well as continue to promote the development of offshore RMB products, including introducing more diversified RMB wealth management products and bonds. The working group formed by the SFC, the HKEX, and the HKMA has completed the feasibility study on allowing stocks traded via the southbound trading of Stock Connect to be denominated in RMB, and put forth recommendations on detailed implementation. The working group will start making preparation in this regard and will discuss with the regulatory authorities and relevant organizations in the mainland. The government will roll out supporting measures such as waiving the stamp duty on stock transfers paid by market makers in their transactions, so as to increase the liquidity of RMB-denominated stocks. We are also working with the regulatory authorities in the mainland to explore enhancement measures for the cross-boundary wealth management connect scheme in the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau GBA, such as increasing quotas gradually, expanding the scope of eligible investment products, inviting more participating organizations, and improving the distribution arrangements. Deepen mutual access with the mainland. Mutual access between the financial markets in the mainland and Hong Kong has been deepening and widening. Last September saw the launch of the southbound trading of Bond Connect and the cross-boundary wealth management connect scheme in the GBA. The Shanghai Hong Kong Stock Connect and the Shenzhen Hong Kong Stock Connect have continued to expand, registering a substantial increase in trading volume. At the end of last year, a consensus was reached among the exchanges in the two places on the inclusion of exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, in the Mutual Market Access Program. The mutual access of ETFs is expected to be implemented soon. As a risk management tool, the A-share index futures contract was also successfully launched last year. We will explore more risk management products. Development of family office business. In my last budget, I proposed to review the relevant tax arrangements with the aim of further attracting family offices to establish a presence in Hong Kong. After discussing and examining the relevant arrangements with the asset management sector, we proposed to provide tax concessions for the eligible family investment management entities managed by single family offices. We will consult the sector on the detailed proposal as soon as possible and aim to submit legislative amendments to the LegCo within the current legislative session. It is expected that the relevant tax concessions will come into effect in the year of assessment 2022 and 2023. I believe that the proposal will enhance our attractiveness as a hub for family offices, deepen Hong Kong's pool of liquidity, and create more business opportunities for the financial sector and other professional sectors. Green and sustainable finance. The development of green and sustainable finance in Hong Kong offers promising prospects. By leveraging our advantages as an international financial center, we can facilitate matching between international capital and quality green projects, contribute proactively to helping our country achieve its 2060 targets in relation to carbon emission peak and carbon neutrality, as well as propelling Hong Kong towards our carbon neutrality targets by year 2050 and promoting green transformation of our economy. Since the launch of our government green bond program in year 2018, a total of more than $7 billion equivalent of green bonds targeting global institutional investors has been successfully issued. Several important milestones have been achieved, including the issuance of a 30-year US dollar denominated green bond and a 20-year euro denominated green bond, and both of which are the first issuance among Asian governments and have established an important reference benchmark for the thriving development of the bond markets in Hong Kong. The successful issuance of RMB green bonds by the Shenzhen municipal government in Hong Kong has set a leading example for the GBA cities to make good use of the Hong Kong markets for green financing. It has also further strengthened Hong Kong's functions as an offshore RMB hub and a green financial center. This year, we will continue to issue green bonds totaling about $4.5 billion or equivalent. The Green and Sustainable Finance Grant Scheme launched last year has been well received by the industry. Over 50 applications have been approved so far, covering various kinds of green and sustainable debt instruments. Among the applications approved, many of them involved subsidies for covering the external review costs relating to green and sustainable loans. To support enterprises in obtaining green financing, we will lower the minimum loan size from $200 million to $100 million in respect of applications for subsidies for covering external review costs under the scheme. Infrastructure financing securitization. To consolidate the vital role of Hong Kong as an infrastructure financing hub and a premier overseas financing platform under the National B&R Initiative, the Hong Kong Mortgage Corporation Limited, or HKMC, will conduct a study on the implementation of a pilot scheme on infrastructure financing securitization within this year. Under the scheme, the HKMC is expected to offer infrastructure financing securitization products with a total value of $450 million to investors in the institutional market in the next financial year. This will enable the local infrastructure financing market to become more vibrant and diversified, and also facilitate the inflow of market capital to high-quality infrastructure projects. Financial technology. The HKMA and the People's Bank of China, or PBOC, signed a memorandum on understanding in October last year. Under the MOU, the two authorities agreed to develop a one-stop platform in the form of a network link-up to allow eligible financial institutions and technology firms to conduct pilot trials of cross-boundary financial technology or Fintech projects concurrently in Hong Kong and the Mainland. At present, more than 10 local banks have expressed interest in using the platform. The HKMA and the PBOC are implementing the operation details of the platform. The Fintech Proof of Concept Subsidy Scheme has received overwhelming response from the industry since its first launch last year. We will allocate a funding of $10 million for launching a new round of the scheme this year. The aim is to promote continuous innovation by encouraging the financial industry to conduct proof of concept projects on more financial services and products. Besides, we propose to provide subsidies to research institutions under the new round of the scheme so that they can put forward solutions as to how to remove development bottlenecks faced by the fintech industry in Hong Kong. Commercial data interchange. The Commercial Data Interchange, or the CDI, announced in last year's budget, which is targeted to be launched by the end of this year, is progressing well. A number of banks have successfully approved loans totaling over 900 million Hong Kong dollars to SMEs using various kinds of commercial data during the study and pilot launch stages of the project. The HKMA will enrich the data-driven financial service ecosystem by exploring the introduction of more commercial data sources in order to expand the function of the CDI. Concurrently, the government will explore ways to enable the financial institutions with the authorization by the enterprises to obtain the enterprises' data kept in government departments from various departments in a computer-readable format. Priority will be accorded to data which facilitates the application for financial services by SMEs. GBA Investment Fund. As I mentioned earlier, I will increase the funding allocated to the Hong Kong Growth Portfolio under the Future Fund by $10 billion, of which $5 billion will be used to set up the Strategic Tech Fund. As for the remaining $5 billion, it will be used to set up a GBA investment fund, which will focus on investment opportunities in the GBA. With the country's support, the GBA will be one of the key drivers of future regional economic development, and the prospects will be promising. As the relationship between Hong Kong and other cities in the GBA becomes closer, investing in the development of various priority industries in the region will not only inject more dynamism to the development of the region, but also bring economic and social benefits to Hong Kong. Arts, culture, and tourism. Arts and culture, which depicts the spirit and values of a community, is where the soft power of a place lies. With a rich Chinese heritage, distinctive advantages as a cultural melting pot of East and West, as well as extensive international connections, Hong Kong is uniquely positioned to tell the story of China and Hong Kong through the promotion of arts and culture development and exchange. This can also tie in with Hong Kong's new positioning as an East meets West center for international cultural exchange under the 14th Five-Year Plan. I will allocate additional resources to promote arts and culture. Hong Kong Performing Arts Market. To promote the development of the arts and cultural sector, it is important for us to provide an international platform, which will be conducive to the creation of a complete ecosystem for the industry. Our arts and cultural sector has gathered considerable strength. In respect of visual arts, Arts Basel, Hong Kong, and the Business of Design Week, held annually, are acclaimed internationally. In year 2020, Hong Kong ranked as the second largest art market in the world after only New York. To consolidate Hong Kong's role as an East-West center for international arts and cultural exchange, I will allocate $42 million for organizing the first Hong Kong performing arts market within 2 years. The large-scale arts market, which is designed for the performing arts industry, will serve as an integrated platform for showcasing the works of top-notch performing artists and arts groups from the mainland, Hong Kong, and overseas. This will help bring the remarkable performing arts of the mainland and Hong Kong onto the world stage through activities such as exhibitions, forums, focus discussions, performances, and trading. The event will also facilitate exchanges between renowned overseas performing artists as well as arts groups and their counterparts in the mainland and Hong Kong. Arts technology. The integration of arts and technology has become a new trend. Apart from expanding the reach of arts and its form of presentation, such integration has also brought new development opportunities for the relevant sectors, especially the youth. In year 2020, we set aside $100 million to promote the integration of arts and technology by providing support to arts groups and R&D talents. To further facilitate arts technology development, I will allocate $30 million to implement an arts technology funding pilot scheme in the next financial year, with the aim of encouraging the 9 major performing arts groups to apply arts technology to enrich their stage production. I will also inject an additional amount of $10 million into the Arts Capacity Development Funding Scheme in order to encourage small and medium-sized arts groups to further explore the use of arts technology under the scheme. In addition, the East Kowloon Cultural Center is expected to be commissioned in phases next year. I will earmark $85 million each year to support its development into a major arts technology venue and incubator for the provision of structured training. I will also set aside $70 million to upgrade the facilities of the performing venues under the Leisure and Cultural Services Department, with a view to enabling arts groups to further apply technology in their performances, thereby enhancing audience experience. Developments of tourism industry. As the developments of tourism industry and the promotion of East-West arts and cultural exchange are closely related, strengthening support for the tourism industry can help achieve synergy. Over the past 2 years, the government has rolled out measures of more than $3.8 billion to support the tourism industry. In addition to providing direct financial subsidy to the trade, it also encourages the trade to explore more local tour itineraries before resumption of cross-boundary tourism, and enhancing the supporting facilities of tourist attractions and the tour guide services as well. In light of fierce regional competition, we will get well prepared by providing additional resources for the promotion of cultural, heritage, and green tourism projects with Hong Kong characteristics, enhancing tourism promotion and rolling out enticing promotional offers in a timely manner to attract tourists from outside Hong Kong. This will also help consolidate Hong Kong's position as a core demonstration zone for multi-destination tourism and an international tourism hub as specified in the Outline Development Plan for the GBA and the Culture and Tourism Development Plan for the GBA. I will earmark $1.26 billion to support and develop the tourism industry, of which $600 million will be used to implement a 3-year scheme entitled Cultural and Heritage Sites Local Tour Incentive Scheme. The scheme aims at providing incentives for the industry to develop and launch tourism products with cultural and heritage elements, as well as supporting the operation of the Green Lifestyle Local Tour Incentive Scheme. Another sum of $60 million will be used to sponsor the training of tourism practitioners for 3 years, with a view to further improving the professional standards and service quality of the industry. The remaining sum of $600 million in the earmark funding will be used for supporting the work of the Hong Kong Tourism Board to revive the tourism industry and implement the CTD plan. The Tourism Board will continue to launch the Holiday at Home campaign to support the industry. When cross-boundary travel gradually resumes, the HKTB will promote the Open House Hong Kong campaign in appropriate source markets with a view to attracting tourists to revisit Hong Kong. Last year, the HKTB completed a preliminary study and a consultation exercise on the positioning of Hong Kong's tourism in the long run. Depending on the circumstances of individual source markets, a new tourism brand promotion campaign will be launched around the world in phases in the coming year. The HKTB will also allocate a sum of $100 million from its reserve to support the above work.
航空
Aviation and maritime sectors. Hong Kong's airport and port facilities are among the best in the world. The 14th Five-Year Plan expressly supports Hong Kong in developing high value-added maritime services and states for the first time the support for enhancing Hong Kong's status as an international aviation hub. The government will continue to take forward the development of Hong Kong's aviation sector by leveraging the geographical advantage of the Hong Kong International Airport on Lantau Island to build an airport city with diversified industry makeup, international air cargo. To further provide quality and efficient cargo services for the GBA, the Airport Authority Hong Kong plans to develop sea-air cargo transshipment between the HKIA and the rest of the GBA. The AA will set up an upstream HKIA logistics park in Dongguan and an airside intermodal cargo handling facility at the HKIA. This will allow export cargo from the mainland to complete security screening in advance and then be transported seamlessly to Hong Kong. It will then be directly transshipped to all overseas destinations through Hong Kong's international aviation network without the need to undergo further security screening. Similarly, international cargo can also be imported into the mainland through the reverse process. Since the end of 2021, the AA has progressively launched a sea-air intermodal pilot scheme with the existing facilities at the HKIA for the purpose of testing and establishing the full operational procedures. Maritime and Port Sector. The Hong Kong Maritime and Port Board has set up a dedicated task force to explore concrete proposals to promote the development of smart port, including further enhancing port efficiency and reducing cargo handling time and costs with the use of a digitalized system. Based on the findings of its study, the HKMPB has proposed to provide half-tax concession to attract more maritime enterprises to establish a presence in Hong Kong. The government plans to introduce the proposed legislative amendments to the LegCo in the first half of this year. Agriculture and Fisheries. To encourage the upgrading and sustainable development of the agricultural and fisheries sector, we have launched two pilot schemes under the Sustainable Agricultural Development Fund and the Sustainable Fisheries Development Fund, respectively, to provide subsidies for the local agriculture and fisheries industry to adopt new technologies such as hydroponic technology, smart farm management, advanced livestock waste treatment technology, deep-sea mariculture, and shellfish and crustacean farming, etc., with a view to further promoting modernization of the industry and enhancing its competitiveness as well as fostering the transfer of knowledge. I propose making two separate injections of $500 million each into the SADF and the SFDF, as well as expanding the coverage of the funds and streamlining the application procedures as appropriate. This will support the development of the industry in terms of application of advanced technology and intensification of production and help it seize the opportunities arising from the GBA development. We will continue to take forward the measures under the new agriculture policy, including the establishment of the agricultural park in Kwu Tung South in the new territories. The Agri-Park Phase 1 will provide about 7 hectares of agricultural land. The works are expected to complete in phases from the second quarter of this year to 2023. As for Phase 2, the preparatory work has commenced and the project is expected to provide about 70 hectares of agricultural land. Stepping up investment promotion. Foreign investment is highly conducive to the development of various economic areas. Quality foreign investment brings in not only capital but also skills and job opportunities. We must continue to attract mainland and overseas enterprises to make investment in Hong Kong to inject new impetus into our economic growth. Hong Kong's appeal to foreign investment is beyond question. According to a survey conducted by the government, the number of mainland and overseas companies in Hong Kong increased by 10% from 8,225 in 2017 to a record high of 9,049 last year, demonstrating that Hong Kong's business environment remains remarkable. Attract investment from the mainland and overseas. Competition among various economies in the aftermath of the pandemic will definitely intensify. We must step up our efforts in investment promotion to attract foreign enterprises to Hong Kong. Starting from the next financial year, The government will provide an additional recurrent provision of around $90 million in phases to strengthen Invest Hong Kong's work and our investment promotion network in the mainland and overseas. At present, Hong Kong has signed 45 comprehensive avoidance of double taxation agreements and is in negotiations with 14 tax jurisdictions with a view to minimizing the risk of double taxation borne by foreign enterprises doing business in Hong Kong. We will continue to proactively expand our CDTA network, Global Financial Leaders Investment Summit. To further tap into Hong Kong's strength in attracting investment and our influence as an international financial center, I have invited the HMA to organize a high-level investment summit. Representatives of mainland and international financial institutions will be invited to attend the summit to learn about the unique advantages and investment environment of Hong Kong and to jointly explore global financial opportunities and the role that Hong Kong can play in the future. Trade development. Hong Kong has all along been a highly open trade center. The 14th Five-Year Plan supports Hong Kong in enhancing its status as an international trade center. The Hong Kong SAR government will continue to proactively develop a more stable, open, inclusive, and mutually beneficial international economic and trade environment in compliance with multilateral trade rules. We will also continue to strengthen our role as a connecting platform between our country and the rest of the world in the international circulation and as a key link for the Belt and Road Initiative, Hong Kong's external trade. The Mainland and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, are the largest and second largest trade partners of Hong Kong respectively. We will continue to strive to introduce more liberalization measures under the framework of the Mainland and Hong Kong Closer Economic Partnership Arrangement, thereby creating more favorable conditions for Hong Kong enterprises to enter the mainland market. The Free Trade Agreement and the related investment agreement between Hong Kong and ASEAN, both of which came into full effect last year, have been implemented smoothly. ASEAN members welcome Hong Kong's interest in seeking accession to the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP. The SAR government is pressing ahead with Hong Kong's early accession to the RCEP. Apart from our major trading partners, we will also continue to seek to enter into FTAs and IAs with other economies. We also strive to strengthen economic and trade connections with the economies in the Middle East and attract enterprises there to do business in Hong Kong through the newly established Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office in Dubai, Trade Single Window. The government has implemented the Trade Single Window in phases since 2018 to enable one-stop lodging of business to government import and export documents with a view to enhancing cargo clearance efficiency. Services under Phase 2 are expected to be rolled out in batches from next year onwards. We have also earmarked about $1.4 billion for the development of the IT system in Phase 3, and the industry is being consulted on the relevant implementation details. Our target is to submit the funding application to the LegCo in the next financial year with a view to achieving full implementation of the TSW as early as possible. Trade promotion. The government has previously made arrangements to allocate an additional sum of $835 million in total to the TDC in 6 years from 2018 to 19 onwards for the implementation of various measures with a view to consolidating Hong Kong's status as a business hub in Asia and exploring business opportunities for Hong Kong companies. In the coming year, the TDC will continue to enhance its mega promotion, Think Business, Think Hong Kong, to strengthen its promotional efforts in ASEAN and mature markets. Moreover, it will actively develop digital platforms to help Hong Kong enterprises explore business opportunities and develop overseas markets. The TDC will also organize a number of events to introduce Hong Kong products and services to the mainland market. Convention and exhibition activities are crucial for developing Hong Kong's external trade and attracting foreign investment. As at the end of January, the government has subsidized 118 C&E events under the Convention and Exhibition Industry Subsidy scheme launched not long after the onset of the COVID-19 outbreak. The scheme also provided one-off immediate relief to organizers of 73 recurrent exhibitions in Hong Kong. The government will actively consider attracting more event organizers to organize C&E activities in Hong Kong when the epidemic situation stabilizes. Rental enforcement moratorium. Many SMEs currently face huge challenge amidst the adverse business environment. Taking into account or into consideration that rental payment constitutes a major part of the operating expenses of enterprises, we will expeditiously introduce new legislation to prohibit landlords from terminating the tenancy of or not providing services to tenants of specified sectors for failing to settle rents on schedule or taking relevant legal actions against them. The relief will be valid for 3 months and, if necessary, be extended one more time for the same duration, with the legislation automatically lapsing after 6 months. The arrangement will provide enterprises in deep water with breathing space and help secure employment. HKMA will be in close communication with the banking sector, and banks will exercise flexibility if the repayment ability of any landlord is affected owing to reduction in his rental income. Support scheme for pursuing development in the mainland. To facilitate Hong Kong businessmen, professional service practitioners, and entrepreneurs in the mainland in better integrating into the overall development of our country and seizing the opportunities there, I will allocate a total funding of $135 million to the TDC over the next 3 years for the introduction of the support scheme for pursuing development in the mainland. The scheme will focus on those mainland cities with larger numbers of Hong Kong business people and workers, with priority accorded to the GBA. Through the TDC's network of offices in the mainland, training and exchange programs, business missions, as well as promotion activities will be organized in partnership with various business associations to further support Hong Kong people in the mainland, including business chambers, professionals groups, and associations of young entrepreneurs. Building capacity. Land and manpower are the two major constraints on Hong Kong's economic growth. In order to ease these constraints, we must make vigorous efforts to create land and nurture talent. Doing so will not only make Hong Kong a better place in which to live and work, but also enable us to scale new heights in economic development, thereby maintaining social stability. Northern Metropolis and Lantau Tomorrow. Both the Northern Metropolis Development Strategy and Lantau Tomorrow Plan are important initiatives for increasing land supply, through which housing supply can be substantially increased. The Northern Metropolis will provide ample land for I&T uses, which will foster I&T development in Hong Kong. Hung Shui Kiu Hachun can also be developed into the new Territories North Modern Services Center. As regards development areas including Sun Tin, Technopole, Lo Wu, Mankam To Comprehensive Development Loan, Macho Long, as well as Lau Fao Shan, Chim Bei Chui, and Pak Nai, the government is striving to formulate development plans for the 4 land formation projects within 2 or 3 years. We will also step up the implementation of the new development areas projects to ensure timely completion of the housing projects. On financial arrangements, I will set aside $100 billion from the cumulative return of the Future Fund to set up a dedicated fund under the Capital Works Reserve Fund in order to expedite the implementation of infrastructure works relating to land, housing, and transportation within the Northern Metropolis. As for Lantau Tomorrow, the studies relating to artificial islands in the Central Waters commenced in last June. It is expected that preliminary proposals will be put forward in the 4th quarter of this year. The government is considering streamlining the procedures with a view to further advancing the development timetable, that is, commencing the first phase of reclamation before the original date of 2027, with the first batch of population intake before 2034. We will make financial assessments when conducting relevant studies and explore the use of different approaches and financing options, including bond issuances or public-private partnerships, etc., to take forward the projects. Transport infrastructure. The provision of comprehensive infrastructure support is crucial for the implementation of the major development projects mentioned above. Infrastructure-led and capacity-building planning approach means that transport infrastructure will be used to drive the development of land. The expansion of the railway network will support NDAs and other new development projects, unleash the development potential of nearby areas, and facilitate revitalization, development, and economic activities in the districts. The government is actively taking forward a series of new railway projects, among which the environmental impact assessment studies for the Northern Link and Hung Shui Kiu Station projects have commenced, while the railway schemes for the Tung Chung Line extension and Two Moon South extension were already concepted. We are exploring the layout of railway and major road infrastructure in the territory, having regard to the development strategy set out in the Hong Kong 2030 Plus towards a planning vision and strategy transcending 2030. These studies are conducted to ensure that the planning of infrastructure will cater for or even reserve capacity to meet the overall long-term development needs of Hong Kong, including the development strategy. Besides, the Transport Department has launched a traffic and transport strategy study to lay down the visions for Hong Kong's traffic and transport policies until 2050 and draw up a strategy blueprint, thereby ensuring that Hong Kong can build a safe, reliable, environmentally friendly, and efficient traffic and transport system.
同埋勞
Talent and labor force. With an aging population and a declining birth rate, Hong Kong's workforce is expected to shrink. To ensure the sustainable development of Hong Kong's economy, apart from ensuring an adequate local supply of human resources, we should also enhance the quality of our workforce and attract talents to Hong Kong. I shall now elaborate on measures for enriching our local talent pool, which include providing training to talent, enhancing the skills, knowledge, and creativity of our manpower resources, and attracting talent from outside Hong Kong. Financial services. Having regard to the new trend of developing low-carbon and sustainable economy, we plan to launch a 3-year pilot green and sustainable finance capacity building support scheme. Under the scheme, subsidies will be provided for the training and acquisition of relevant professional qualifications so as to encourage practitioners in the financial and other relevant sectors to participate in the training. We are also actively implementing the development of professional qualifications recognized under the qualifications framework for Fintech practitioners. The first batch of Fintech professional qualifications for the banking sector is expected to be rolled out this year. We will also implement the pilot scheme on training subsidy for Fintech practitioners this year. Practitioners who have attained Fintech professional qualifications can receive reimbursement of 80% of the tuition fees, and around 1,500 places will be offered. We will conduct a consultancy study this year with a view to continuing developing Fintech professionals' qualifications for different financial sectors, thereby promoting comprehensive professional development of Fintech talent. The estimated expenditure of the scheme is $43 million. Besides, we have commissioned the Cyberport to implement a new round of financial practitioners' Fintech training program this year to provide training programs and tuition fee subsidies for practitioners in the insurance and securities sectors. Subsidies will also be provided for the two sectors to organize their own training programs. Innovation and technology. The HKSTPC and the Cyberport continue to provide young people with internship and training opportunities through various schemes. The Hong Kong SAR government has also launched a number of schemes such as the STEM internship scheme and the Research Talent Hub to provide incentives or subsidies for graduates to pursue a career in INT. At present, the Technology Talent Admission Scheme provides a fast track to process entry applications of individuals undertaking R&D work. The Global STEM Professorship Scheme, on the other hand, supports universities in recruiting internationally renowned INT scholars and their teams to conduct research and teaching activities in Hong Kong. We will consider rolling out more relevant measures to facilitate the entry of talents into Hong Kong in due course. Healthcare. To step up our efforts in coping with the continuous healthcare manpower shortage in the future, I intend to gradually increase recurrent allocation up to $400 million a year as needed for enhancing training for medical professionals starting from the 2023-24 school year onward, including providing subsidies for students to enroll in taught postgraduate programs on healthcare offered by University Grants Committee-funded universities, self-financing post-secondary institutions, or public medical institutions. Students who have successfully completed the programs can become medical professionals. Meanwhile, 500 more designated places will be provided under the Study Subsidy Scheme for Designated Professions sectors to provide subsidies for students to take self-financing undergraduate programs on healthcare. Besides, I will ask the FHB and the HA to explore waiving the clinical practicum training fees payable by tertiary institutions to the HA in respect of their subsidized undergraduate programs and taught postgraduate programs on healthcare. Apart from the earmarked sum of $20 billion as announced in the 2018 policy address, I will set aside another $10 billion for the completion of the works to upgrade and increase the healthcare teaching facilities of the University of Hong Kong, Chinese University of Hong Kong, and Hong Kong Polytechnic University. Upon completion of the proposed facilities, the three universities will have the capacity of coping with about 900 additional healthcare training places. Arts and culture. I will allocate $37 million over the next 6 years to provide professional training for the conservators of the LCSD and those of the Hong Kong Palace Museum, which will be opened soon, as well as increase the number of places under the Museum Trainees Conservation Program and the Summer Internship Program. It is expected that the measures will benefit more than 150 people. I will also inject $100 million into the Cantonese Opera Development Fund to further support Cantonese opera practitioners in enhancing their professional standards and pursuing continuous training, with a view to facilitating the long-term development of the Cantonese opera sector. It is expected that the measure will benefit 800 Cantonese opera practitioners. Construction industry. In order to train more new blood and upskill in-service workers, I propose to allocate $1 billion to the Construction Industry Council for supporting manpower training, which includes increasing the training places and the amount of allowance for trades facing labor shortage to attract new entrants and job changers to the industry, and increasing the training places for upgrading semi-skilled construction workers to skilled workers and the amount of allowance. We will also step up efforts to promote the professional image and career prospects of the construction industry in order to attract more young people to join. We established the Center for Excellence for Major Projects Leaders in 2019 with the aim of equipping public officers with a more innovative mindset and enhanced leadership skills for taking forward public works projects. I've set aside $30 million for extending the training of the center to stakeholders outside the government, including projects-related personnel of major public organizations, as well as those working for consultants and contractors engaged in public works projects, with a view to enhancing the overall performance of works projects and jointly taking forward our long-term major development plans. Quality Migrants Admission Scheme. Upon completion of a review of the talents list of Hong Kong under the Quality Migrants Admission Scheme earlier on, the government has added to the list the professions of professionals in compliance and in asset management and financial professionals in environmental, social and governance, expanded the scope of some existing professions to include experts of medical and healthcare sciences, microelectronics, integrated circuit design and arts technology, as well as refined the requirements on legal and dispute resolution professionals. This is to complement Hong Kong's policy direction to accord priority to the development of finance, I&T, arts and culture, as well as dispute resolution services in future, and attract more targeted talents to Hong Kong. Vocational and professional education and training. In addition, the government has been actively promoting the development of vocational and professional education and training by providing flexible and diversified pathways for young people with different aspirations and abilities, with view to nurturing talents required for the development of Hong Kong. The Pilot Incentive Scheme to employers and the Pilot International Study Program under the Training and Support Scheme, as well as the Pilot Study Scheme, a Pilot Subsidy Scheme for students of professional part-time programs, have been implemented by the Vocational Training Council, or VTC, to facilitate workplace learning and assessment, broaden learners' horizon, and encourage continuing education among the working population. The government has decided to extend the schemes for 2 years to benefit more trainees. The government is currently reviewing the Diploma Yijin subsidy scheme and enhancing the program curriculum. The scheme will be regularized starting from the 2023 to 24 school year to continue supporting secondary 6 school leavers as well as adult learners in securing employment and pursuing further study. Encourage continuing education. To keep on promoting continuing education and encouraging members of the public to pursue self-enhancement, the government will raise the subsidy ceiling of the Continuing Education Fund, or CEF, from $20,000 to $25,000 per applicant and remove the upper age limit. This new initiative will benefit 760,000 people, 760,000 more eligible persons, as well as those who have opened a CEF account. Building a livable city, land supply. The current term government adopts a multi-pronged strategy to actively expedite land supply for housing. There has been a steady land supply for private housing developments over the past 5 years, involving around 86,000 units. It is estimated that the overall land supply in year 2021 to 2022 can provide about 20,000 units, around 7,000 more than the supply target. Looking ahead, the 2022 to 23 land sale program will comprise a total of 13 residential sites and 4 commercial sites, capable of providing about 8,000 residential units and about 300,000 square meters of commercial floor area, respectively. With the residential sites under the land sale program, together with railway property developments, private developments and redevelopment projects, as well as the Urban Renewal Authorities projects, The potential land supply for the whole year is expected to have a capacity of providing about 18,000 units. As for land supply for private housing developments in the short to medium term, we will secure approximately 103 hectares of land in the coming 5 years and make available to the market sites for the production of over 57,000 units through land sales or putting up railway property developments for tender. Among such land, nearly 40% comes from NDAs or new town extensions, another 40% from other districts under the government's land sale programs, and the remaining from railway property developments in design stage. The above figures have not taken into account URA projects and other private land development projects. In the coming year, I will introduce various enhancement measures to expedite the process, optimize land use, and promote the application of INT in the construction industry with a view to speeding up the use of land and housing production. Streamline statutory procedures. The Development Bureau is pressing ahead with the review of the land development legislation with a view to streamlining development processes and statutory procedures and hence shortening the time of land creation. We plan to introduce amendment bills into the legislature within this year, hoping that all sectors of the community will support the reform so that the various reclamation works and NDA projects as well as public and private housing projects can be completed as soon as possible. Develop multi-story industrial buildings. With the launch of various large-scale NDA projects, many brownfield operations in the NDAs will inevitably be affected by land resumption. The government has engaged a consultancy firm to conduct a market sounding exercise to gauge market interest. With the benefits of this exercise, the government initially tends to identify sites in Hung Shui Kiu and Yuen Long for the development of multi-story industrial buildings by leveraging market forces. These buildings will be mainly used by logistics and automobile repairing industries and will provide space for other appropriate uses and for brownfield site business operators affected by land resumption. The Development Bureau seeks to sell the first piece of land concerned by public tender next year. Promotes the adoption of innovation and technology in the construction industry. I allocated $1 billion in year 2018 to set up the Construction Innovation and Technology Fund, or the CITF, to boost the capacity of the construction industry to adopt new technology. After operating for more than 3 years, the CITF is delivering results, and I propose to inject another $1.2 billion for its ongoing operation and implementation of enhancement measures launched recently, including expanding the funding scope and increasing the funding ceiling. Besides, I have earmarked $30 million to promote applied R&D as well as the adoption of new materials and innovative construction technologies in public works and the industry in the coming 3 years, with a view to enhancing the overall productivity and performance of the construction industry. Further encourage the adoption of modular integrated construction method. Modular integrated construction, or MIC, helps substantially shorten construction time, address the problem of manpower shortage in the industry, and reduce the environmental impacts brought by construction works. To expedite housing supply, the government will introduce more concessionary measures to encourage the adoption of MIC, including increasing the concession of floor area from the current 6% to 10% and providing corresponding site coverage concession as well as supporting applications for exceeding building height limits due to increase in floor area caused by the adoption of MIC. The government will put the above measures in place in the middle of this year.
Housing supply. The government has identified some 350 hectares of land for the provision of about 330,000 public housing units to meet the demand for about 301,000 public housing units in the next 10 years. Of these 330,000 units, about one-third are scheduled for completion in the first 5-year period, with the remaining in the second 5-year period. On private housing, it's estimated that the completion of private residential units will average over 19,000 units annually in the 5 years from 2022 onward, representing an increase of about 14% over the annual average of the past 5 years. The projected first-hand private residential unit supply for the next 3 to 4 years is 98,000 units, reaching a new high in recent years. Besides, the government has already identified sufficient land for the provision of more than 17,000 transitional housing units. About 2.3 thousand units are already in operation. In addition, more than 4.2 thousand units are under construction and are expected for completion this year. It is expected that another 11,000 more units will be completed for operation by the end of next year. Mortgage insurance program. Over the years, the government has been suppressing investors' and speculators' demand for local property while striving to assist people in buying their own homes. At the end of 2019, the government relaxed the mortgage insurance program of the HKMC Insurance Limited. Public response was positive, with the property market remaining stable. Given the current market condition, the supply in the next few years, and the need to provide assistance for the first-time home buyers and families seeking self-occupied flat for flat, I have instructed the HKMC Insurance Limited to make amendments to the MIP. For those home buyers and families, the cap on the value of a property eligible for a mortgage loan of a maximum cover of 80% loan-to-value ratio will be raised from $10 to $12 million. For first-time home buyers, the cap on the value of a property eligible for a mortgage loan of a maximum cover of 90% LTV ratio will be raised from the existing $8 million to $10 million. The HKMC Insurance Limited will announce the details later. As for other property demand management measures, we have no plan for relaxation. Building a green city. To strive to achieve carbon neutrality before 2050, the government will implement strategies and measures to reduce carbon emissions in accordance with the Hong Kong's Climate Action Plan 2050 published last year. Concurrently, the government will continue to promote new energy and transportation so as to further enhance air quality. Over the past few years, resources have been allocated in the budget to take forward the building of a green city and implement a range of measures on various fronts to combat climate change. Green Tech Fund. I will inject an additional funding of $200 million into the Green Tech Fund with a view to further promoting decarbonization and enhancing environmental protection in Hong Kong. The first round of GTF applications received an overwhelming response, and the second round of applications has commenced. The funding injected will primarily be used to subsidize projects in priority areas such as net zero electricity generation, energy saving and green buildings, green transport and waste reduction, which will in turn help support innovation and create job opportunities for the I&T industry. Some 40 additional projects can be funded with the new injection. Charging facilities for electric vehicles. The government launched the $2 billion EV charging at home subsidy scheme in October 2020 to promote the installation of EV charging enabling infrastructure in car parks of existing private residential buildings. Given the overwhelming response, we will inject an additional sum of $1.5 billion to extend the scheme for 4 years to the 2027 to 28 financial year. The scheme will support the installation of EV charging enabling infrastructure for a total of about 140,000 parking spaces in some 100 existing private residential buildings, accounting for about half of the eligible parking spaces in Hong Kong. The government is preparing to gradually convert some existing petrol or liquefied petroleum gas filling stations into quick charging stations so as to support the provision of charging services for more diverse types of vehicles. We will also explore the feasibility of developing some larger filling station sites under the single-site multiple-use model. Enhance the capability of the low-lying areas to withstand threats. Climate change will lead to rising sea level and extreme waves. To enhance the capability of the coastal areas in responding to climate change, the government plans to earmark funding in the next 5 years to take forward improvement projects and management measures for 26 low-lying or windy residential areas that are prone to high risk. We will also commence strategic studies on coastal management with a view to providing guidelines on planning and land use, as well as formulating the related long-term strategies and preventive measures. In addition, we will seek funding approval of about $8.4 billion this year for carrying out drainage improvement works in various districts to enhance the flood control capability. Quality living. In order that Hong Kong people and tourists can enjoy the diverse cultural heritage, the beauty of the harbourfront, and the enhanced cultural sports and recreational facilities in Hong Kong, we will take forward our work in the following areas. Enhanced harbourfront. The current term government has allocated $6.5 billion for developing new harbourfront promenades and open space, as well as improving harbourfront facilities. In 2021, a total of 13 new harbourfront sites, including the harbour steps at Wan Chai Harbourfront, were opened, providing the public with more well-connected open space in close proximity to the Victoria Harbour and giving them a variety of water-friendly experience. In the coming year, we will continue to adopt the incremental approach in taking forward our plans to open the Horsham Park extension in Kowloon City and the first section of the promenade under private development in the Kai Tak former runway area. This will extend the Victoria Harbour Promenade by 1 kilometer to a total length of 26 kilometers. Sports development. The government has been proactively promoting sports development with new resources allocation of more than $60 billion since 2017 for promoting sports in the community, supporting elite sports, and maintaining Hong Kong's status as a center for major international sports events, as well as for providing more sports and recreational facilities. These efforts encourage collaboration among different sectors of the community in fostering a strong sports culture. In 2019, the government injected $6 billion into the Elite Athletes Development Fund to subsidize the provision of comprehensive support to athletes through the Hong Kong Sports Institute. We also injected $250 million into the Hong Kong Athletes Fund in 2020 to encourage more athletes to commit to full-time training, as well as dual-track development in sports training and academic studies. I'm delighted to see that Hong Kong athletes achieve outstanding and encouraging results in international sports events last year, and I hope more young people in Hong Kong will pursue a career in sports, develop their potential, and bring glory to Hong Kong. Besides, we are pressing ahead with the Kai Tak Sports Park project, which is scheduled for completion by the end of next year. We are also proactively implementing the $20 billion 5-year plan for sports and recreational facilities and taking forward the construction and upgrading of community sports and recreational facilities. Meanwhile, we are progressively carrying out the 5-year plan to transform the public play spaces managed by the LCST. Cultural facilities. As announced in the 2018-19 budget, the government would set aside $20 billion for the improvement and development of cultural facilities in the following 10 years. We plan to seek funding approval this year to take forward the main works of a cultural center in Fanling, the construction of Yau Ma Tei Theatre Phase 2, as well as the main works of the leisure and cultural complex at Tin Yip Road, Tin Shui Wai Project Phase 1. Community Arts Scheme. Popularization of arts can enrich people's quality of life. Starting from the 2024-25 financial year, I will allocate $20 million per year to regularize the LCSD's Community Arts Scheme with the aim of providing more opportunities for members of the public to take part in arts and cultural activities, thereby promoting the integration of arts into our community. Over the past decade or so, we have allocated a total of $2.4 billion for the Revitalizing Historic Buildings Through Partnership Scheme, under which 19 historic building conservation projects have been launched so far. Through the Financial Assistance for Maintenance Scheme on Built Heritage, we have also assisted private owners in carrying out proper maintenance works for 71 historic buildings. Moreover, we are committed to enhancing public awareness of conservation of historic buildings and supporting relevant academic research. The Built Heritage Conservation Fund has subsidized many successful revitalization projects, such as Tile Heritage Hotel, Lui Seng Chun, and Yao Chung Yi Academy since its establishment. These revitalization projects have become local highlights, attracting many people to visit during leisure time. They also enhance Hong Kong's appeal as a tourist destination, and many of them have won international awards for heritage conservation. I propose to earmark an additional funding of $1 billion for the fund, with a view to further promoting the conservation of heritage and historic buildings. Caring and inclusion. We will continue to strengthen community and residential care services as well as social work services to support the elderly, persons with disabilities, and children, involving an additional annual expenditure of over $1.9 billion. On residential care services, we will regularize 3 pilot schemes, namely the pilot scheme on multidisciplinary outreaching support teams for the elderly, the pilot scheme on residential care service voucher for the elderly, and the pilot scheme on professional outreaching teams for private residential care homes for persons with disabilities. We will also allocate additional resources to upgrade the standard of EA2 homes under the enhanced block play scheme. On community care services, we will regularize the pilot scheme on home care and support for elderly persons with mild impairment and the speech therapy service of the enhanced home and community care services, so as to help the elderly in need age in place. On the provision of additional welfare facilities, we will set up 7 contract residential care homes in the multi-welfare services complex, which is near completion at Kutong North NDA, as well as a new contract residential care home under the development project at Queens Hill in Fanling. In addition, a neighborhood elderly center, a special Child Care Center and an Early Education and Training Center will also be set up in Area 54, Tuen Mun, to provide community support and training services for the elderly, carers of elderly persons and children with special needs in the area. We will also regularize the pilot scheme on social work service for pre-primary institutions to facilitate early identification of and provision of assistance to pre-primary children and their families with welfare needs. Moreover, persons with disabilities receiving subsidized residential care and community rehabilitation services will be provided with soft meals from October this year onwards to cater for the needs of users with a swallowing problem. Neighborhood Support Childcare Project. Under the Neighborhood Support Childcare Project launched in 2008, service operators recruit child carers to provide families in their neighborhood with flexible day child care services at home as a way to foster the spirit of mutual help in the community. To better meet the keen demand for day child care services, the government will review the implementation mode and effectiveness of the project, including the need for home-based child carers to undergo certified training and the level of their pay, with a view to enhancing service quality as well as attracting more people to become home-based child carers. The review is expected to be completed by mid-2023.
Public finance. The current term government has all along been adhering to the principles of exercising fiscal prudence, keeping expenditure within the limits of revenue, and committing resources as and when justified and needed in public finance management. We have also strived to enhance the transparency of public finance. Thanks to years of economic development and the hard work of our people, the fiscal reserve stood at about $950 billion when this term of the government took office, and subsequently reached a record high of $1.17 trillion in year 2018-19. The ample fiscal reserves have enabled the government to allocate additional resources in a prompt and decisive manner to defuse crisis over the past 2 years, including setting up the AEF with an injection of about $200 billion in total, and implementing counter-cyclical measures on a massive scale to relieve people's hardship and stabilize the economy. Though consolidated deficits were recorded from 2019 to 2020 to 21 as a result, the positive impacts of the above initiatives, along with our solid foundation built on the principle of one country, two systems, have turned the consolidated deficits projected in the original estimates into a consolidated surplus projected in the revised estimates for this financial year. Our fiscal reserves are estimated to stand at about $940 billion at the end of the current term of the government, and will gradually rebound to over $1 trillion. Equivalent to 16 months of government expenditure during the 5-year period in the medium-range forecast. On enhancing the transparency of public finance, I have brought back the housing reserve to the fiscal reserves since 2019-20, and also announced last year that the investment return of the future fund would be progressively reflected in the operating account. These measures will allow one to have a full grasp of the government's fiscal strength and help maintain our financial stability. Striving to maintain healthy public finances. To address social aspirations and strive for service enhancement, the current term government has significantly increased the recurrent expenditure on social welfare, healthcare, and education. Based on the revised estimates for the current financial year, the overall cumulative increase in the recurrent expenditure in these three areas will exceed 40%, or close to $85 billion in dollar terms. In view of the very substantial increase in the recurrent expenditure from $361.8 billion in year 2017-18 to over $510 billion in the original estimates for this year, I emphasized last year that government expenditure should enter a consolidation period. I also announced an expenditure reduction program, under which government departments were required to cut recurrent expenditure by 1% without affecting livelihood-related spending. Given the lasting effects of the recurrent expenditure reduction, we will not roll out any further expenditure reduction program this year. Otherwise, the cumulative impact may disrupt departmental operations and in turn affect the delivery of public services. We will, however, continue to examine carefully any new initiatives that will incur recurrent expenditure and strictly control the growth of the civil service, so as to ensure that our long-term financial commitments are commensurate with the increase in our revenue. The current term government actively promotes the government green bond program. Given that green bonds are issued to finance certified green projects and our commitments not to use the proceeds for meeting operating expenditure, They are widely accepted by investors. The issuance of green bonds will not undermine our fiscal discipline, but can relieve the government's fiscal pressure arising from the need to meet capital expenditure with existing resources, and hence further reinforce the confidence in our public finances. Increasing revenue. Hong Kong is an open economy with a relatively narrow tax base. Our revenue is susceptible to changes in the economic environment. To maintain healthy public finances, we follow the principle of keeping expenditure within the limits of revenue to ensure that the growth of expenditure is commensurate with economic growth. We also need to maintain the development and vibrancy of Hong Kong's economy and identify new areas of growth with a view to increasing revenue. Our simple and low tax regime, one of the cornerstones of our success in maintaining Hong Kong's competitiveness, is of utmost importance in bolstering our competitive edge. It is also closely related to our economy and people's livelihood. On the other hand, owing to the implementation of various policy objectives, enhancement of services, and an increase in investments in various areas of the community pursued by the current term of the government, public expenditure will remain at a relatively higher level. Our anti-epidemic efforts and the relief measures implemented in the past 2 years have also incurred additional expenditure. Given that government's revenue should be commensurate with its expenditure, we need to implement measures to increase revenue without affecting people's livelihood, so that we can broaden our revenue sources while maintaining our policy of low tax rates in Hong Kong. In last year's budget, I proposed to raise the rate of stamp duty on stock transfers as a measure to help increase government revenue in the short run. However, with the outbreak of the fifth wave of the epidemic, businesses and individuals are generally under considerable financial pressure. Having regard to the current economic situation, I believe that this is still not the appropriate time to revise the rates of profits tax and salaries tax, which are major sources of revenue. We anticipate that a deficit will still be recorded in year 2022-23. In the medium term, with the implementation in 2023 of the international tax reform proposals drawn up by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, the introduction of a global minimum tax rate may help increase revenue from profits tax. I also propose to introduce a progressive rating system for domestic properties to reflect the affordable users pay principle. I will elaborate on these two measures in the latter part of the budget. Taking into account these new revenue streams, we expect that the government will start to achieve fiscal balance beginning from year 2023-24. In the long run, there will still be challenges in alleviating the pressure on public expenditure in the face of an aging population. The government will continue to explore different ways to broaden revenue sources and will initiate in-depth discussions in due course to forge a consensus on how to sustain healthy public finances to meet the development needs of our economy and society. Rating system. Revenue from rates accounts for about 3 to 4% of total government revenue. Last year, I announced in my budget a review of the rating system. Upon review, I propose to revise the rating system as follows. A. Granting rates concession in a more targeted manner. The government will continue to consider on an annual basis whether to provide rates concession in the light of the prevailing circumstances to allow flexibility for the measure. In addition, in view of the public concern over the multiple rates concession received by owners with multiple domestic properties under the current rates concession mechanism, we propose that for future rates concession for domestic properties, only those eligible owners who are natural persons can apply for rates concession for one domestic property under their name. Taking the rates concession ceiling of year 2022-23 as a reference, the new arrangement can save around $3.1 billion for the government when a one-off rates concession is implemented in the future. And B. Introducing a progressive rating system for domestic properties. For domestic properties with rateable value of $550,000 or below, it is proposed that rates be charged at the present level of 5% of the rateable value. For domestic properties with rateable value over $550,000, it is proposed that rates be charged at 5% of the rateable value on the first $550,000 and at 8% of the rateable value on the next $250,000, and then at 12% on rateable value exceeding $800,000. This can better reflect the affordable users pay principle. It is expected that about 42,000 domestic properties will be affected, accounting for around 2% of the total number of private domestic properties, with an increase of about $760 million in government revenue each year. The above revisions to the rating system will involve significant modifications on the IT system of the Rating and Valuation Department. The government will implement the above revision proposals in phases. The proposal regarding rates concession for domestic properties will be rolled out in the first phase in year 2023 to 24, whereas the proposed progressive rating system for domestic properties will be introduced in the second phase in year 2024 and 25. The government will in due course consult the electrical panel on financial affairs on the outcome of the rating system review, the details and the implementation timetable of the proposals. New international tax standards. Last year, Hong Kong, together with more than 130 jurisdictions across the globe, pledged to implement the international tax reform proposals drawn up by the OECD to address base erosion and profit shifting, abbreviated as BEPS 2.0. As the global minimum effective tax rate under BEPS 2.0 only targets large multinational enterprise, or MNE, groups with global turnover of at least 750 million euros, it will not affect local SMEs. The government has been exchanging views with the affected MNEs on matters relating to the implementation of BEPS 2.0 and reaffirmed that we would preserve the advantages of Hong Kong's tax regime in terms of its simplicity, certainty, and transparency, maintain the territorial source principle of taxation, as well as minimize the compliance burden on MNEs when implementing BEPS 2.0. The government will maintain communication with the relevant MNEs to enable them to familiarize with the new tax rules as soon as possible. We plan to submit a legislative proposal to the LegCo in the second half of this year to implement the global minimum tax rate and other relevant requirements in accordance with the international consensus. At the same time, we will consider introducing a domestic minimum top-up tax with regard to the aforesaid MNEs, starting from the year of assessment 2024 to 25, to ensure that the effective tax rates reach the global minimum effective tax rate of 15%, so as to safeguard Hong Kong's taxing rights. Based on our rough estimates, the domestic minimum top-up tax will involve an amount of about 15 billion Hong Kong dollars per year. Revised estimates for year 2021 to 22. The 2021-22 revised estimates on government's revenue is $682.7 billion, higher than the original estimates by 15.5% or $91.8 billion. This is mainly because revenues from land premium and profits tax are higher than the estimates by $43.5 billion and $32.4 billion, respectively. As for government expenditure, the revised estimate is $699 billion, 4% or $28.8 billion lower than the original estimates. This is mainly because the operating expenditure is $18.8 billion lower than the estimates. All in all, I forecast a surplus of $18.9 billion for year 2021 to 22. Fiscal reserves are expected to be $946.7 billion by the 31st of March this year. The civil service establishments recorded zero growth in this financial year. Departments have enhanced effectiveness and efficiency through prioritization, internal redeployments, and streamlining of work processes so that the workload can be handled even without increase in the civil service establishments. Estimates for year 2022 to 23. The major policy initiatives announced in the 2021 policy address involve an operating expenditure of about $10.4 billion and a capital expenditure of $4.7 billion. I will ensure that adequate resources are provided to fully support the launch of these initiatives. Total government revenue for year 2022 to 23 is estimated to be $715.9 billion. Earnings and profits tax is estimated to be $251.1 billion, increasing by 3.3% over the revised estimates for year 2021 to 22. Having regard to the land sale program and the land supply targets of year 2022 to 23, revenue from land premium is estimated to be $120 billion, decreasing by 15% compared with the revised estimates for 2021 to 22. Revenue from stamp duties is estimated to be $113 billion, increasing by 11.9% over the revised estimates for year 2021 to 22. Total government expenditure for year 2021 to 22 decreased by 14.4%. with its share in nominal GDP projected to drop from the peak of 30% in year 2020 to 21 to 24.4%. Total government expenditure for year 2022 and 23 will increase by 15.5% to $807.3 billion. Public expenditure will continue to account for about 24.9% of GDP on average during the 5-year period up to 2026 to 27 in the MRF. The recurrent expenditure of the current term government increased from $361.8 billion in year 2017 to 18 to $467.1 billion in year 2020 to 21, representing an increase of nearly 30%. Of this, expenditure on education, social welfare, and healthcare, which are the three policy areas closely related to people's livelihood, accounts for about 58%. In year 2022 to 23, the estimated recurrent expenditure on education, social welfare, and healthcare accounts for 60%, or $341.6 billion. Among these, the expenditure on healthcare has recorded the largest increase, representing more than double of that in year 2017 to 18. The government's target of zero growth in the civil service establishment will remain unchanged in year 2022 to 23, with the aim of ensuring the sustainability of public finances. It is expected that as at the end of March 2023, there will be about 197,000 posts in the civil service establishment.
中期
Medium range forecast. The MRF projects, mainly from a macro perspective, the revenue and expenditure as well as financial position of the government. From 2023 to 24 to 2026 to 27, a real economic growth rate of 3% per annum is adopted for the MRF. During the above period, the average annual capital works expenditure will exceed $100 billion, while the recurrent government expenditure is expected to drop by 1.8% in 2023 to 24. It will subsequently grow at a rate between 4.1% and 4.6% per annum. Regarding revenue from land premium, the forecast for 2023 to 24 continues to be based on the average proportion of revenue from land premium to GDP over the past 15 years, which is 3.8% of GDP. I also assume that the growth rate of revenue from profits tax and other taxes will correspond to the economic growth rate in the next few years. In addition, the MRF reflects the bringing back of the investment return of the Future Fund and the proceeds of the government green bond program. Based on the above assumptions and arrangements, I forecast a deficit in the operating account in 2022-23, which will turn into a surplus in 2023-24. There will be a surplus in the capital account in each of the 5 years during the MRF period, except for the estimated deficit in the operating account in 2022-23, which is mainly attributed to the one-off relief measures and anti-epidemic expenditure announced in this budget. There will be a surplus in the subsequent 4 years. The above forecast has not taken into account any tax rebate or relief measure that the government may implement over the coming 4 years. Fiscal reserves are estimated at $1.065 trillion by the end of March 2027, representing 28.9% of GDP, or equivalent to 16 months of government expenditure. Mr. President, members, Hong Kong is currently experiencing its hardest time in the fight against the epidemic, and we are facing enormous challenges. Yet, we do have great strength and staunch support to ride out the storm. As long as we are united in taking decisive action with firm determination and unwavering confidence, we can surely win the battle against the epidemic, and our difficulties will eventually go away. After containing the epidemic, our next task will be to propel economic revival and accelerate medium to long-term development. To this end, we must stand high and stand firm to see clearly the big picture, better understand the long-term development trends, have a good grasp of the economic patterns, concentrate on the focal points, and map out long-term plans while remaining steadfast against fluctuations in the short term. Meanwhile, in the face of the profound changes worldwide unseen in a century, and the complex external environment, we must plan ahead and get well prepared to guard against risks so as to consolidate our development path and achievements. Since reunification, Hong Kong has weathered many storms with its economic and financial conditions remaining largely stable. Yet, amid the adversities, many issues have emerged, such as the imbalance in economic development, inadequate opportunities for young people to give full play to their strengths, as well as the distribution of economic gains, which have scope for improvement. Such issues need to be resolved step by step in the future. However, all these issues, which have implications for social harmony and stability in the long run, cannot be resolved in one stroke and have to be dealt with through the concerted efforts of our whole community. President, members, while every fascinating story is full of twists and turns, every success is spurred by the strength gained from overcoming setbacks. If there is one common factor, it may be that those who are striving to overcome setbacks and achieve success are all guided by firm determination and faith that they will be able to navigate through troubled waters. We deeply believe that Hong Kong can steer towards becoming a more equitable, just, caring, and inclusive society. This year marks the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to the motherland, a landmark occasion that can usher in the start of a new chapter in Hong Kong's development. The implementation of the national security law and improvements to the electoral system have brought Hong Kong back on a track focusing on development. We are on course to embark on a new phase of good governance, which we all look forward to. Our country has always provided the strongest backing for Hong Kong. During the ups and downs of our development, our motherland has always given us staunch support, enabling us to write the next line in Hong Kong's success story. In the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, Hong Kong has a unique and irreplaceable role to play. On the back of our country's sustained and steady development, Hong Kong has a bright and promising future under one country, two systems. We share the same dream with our country. Together and united, we can build a better home with courage, wisdom, confidence, and action. Thank you. I now propose the question to you that the aforesaid bill be read the second time. In accordance with the rules of procedure, the second reading debate is adjourned and the bill is referred to the Finance Committee. Secretary for Labour